Okay, so we're going to begin Siman Kuf Tzadik. We're still talking about chsomim, stains, and the emphasis here is: can we attribute the ket and the stain to something other than the makor, than dam coming from the makor? Because we know if it's from the makor, then she's going to be tmeya. But there's a chance that the stain is coming from elsewhere. It could be a petza, a makkah, an injury from a butcher that she went by. And initially, we discussed the mechaber that says that not every place on her physical body is necessarily going to be tmeya. In other words, it has to be that it makes sense that it would come from the makor. So even though it's her physical body, as we've seen before, that the body, the physical body, were more machmir than if she were to find it somewhere else, like on her clothing or in the toilet seat, which is exempt for other reasons. The physical body, we're a little bit stricter. There are even opinions that even less than a gris, right? If the various teeping, there's various spots on her basar, and in one place you don't have a gris, we're not mitzar of them, and she's tehara. But that's only if it's on her garment. If it's on her besara, we said that we are mitzaref them to gris. That was one chumrah of finding it on besara. And as well as the other seif vav, that which we require a shear for a ketem if it's found in the garment, according to some opinions. Ketem on imtza besara, some are machmir and achoshesh even if there's no shear. The first opinion of the mechaber was that it makes no difference whether it's nimsa la chaluka or nimsa besara, it requires a shear. But still, we see from all of these that nimsa besara is stricter only because it's more likely than not, unless she has a petza, that it came from the makor. Still, the mechaber in Sif Yud Aleph makes it very clear that it doesn't mean anywhere on her basar would make her tmeya. It all depends. If it's feasible, if it is actually possible for her to have come from the makor, and he lists various locations where there's a chance it does come and we're machmir, and some locations that were not machmir. And even within these locations, there are different opinions amongst the poskim. Where do we have to be machmir? Is it on all fingers or just the toe? So I'm not going to get into all the details right now, but suffices to say that anytime this situation occurs, one has to evaluate, of course, the whole situation, to take into account all kinds of criteria, including the fact that today women wear undergarments, and as a result of the undergarments, perhaps are a little bit different. What is it doing on her basar if her undergarment is clean? Today the situation may be a little bit different only because of that detail, the undergarment. Okay, so it always has to be evaluated. So before we go on, we'll review the klalim that we said before, because that's going to come up again. Klal number 1 of ein machzikin tuma mimakom lemakom. In other words, in case a kesem did fall, for example, or was seen on her feet or hands, in a place where it cannot really have come from the makor. So we're not choshesh that she took it to that spot using her hands from the place where it was actually really found, where it would have made her tmeya. In other words, we don't assume the worst, even though now it's in a place where it's not tmeya, where it does not make her tmeya. We don't say, well, it really was in a place where she would have become tmeya, but somehow she took it with her hand. She touched that spot, and now she touched herself in a place where we would not suspect that it came. So that's part of the klal of ein machzikim tuma mimakom lemakom. That much we're not choishish. But we also don't do the opposite of ein machzikim tahara mimakom lemakom, by saying, you know what, she does have a petza. Let's just say that she touched with her hand in her petza, and then she touched this other place where the kesem was found. That we also don't say. If that place could in itself have become stained from the makor, we don't say, well, you know what, it didn't really come from the makor, it came from her petza. She touched the bed, then it came in. No, if that place really is a place where it could have come from the makor, so we're not machzik tahara mimakom lemakom. However, there are some sfeikas here in the Achronim. Poskim bring down a situation where she knows for sure she touched the mokom hapetza. She doesn't recall if she got dirty as a result of that. And after that, she touched in that place where we now see the kesem. Right? So there is a little bit of a kula over here. We know she touched the mokom hapetza, right? But she doesn't recall that her hands were dirty or got bloodied. So there are some who are lenient with this piece of information that we have, that at the very least we know that she did touch there. The second, however, scenario is that we do know that her hands became bloodied from the makkah. We say yadayim askanyothen. We just don't know whether she touched. So what happened after the hands were bloodied? The hands usually do move around. Do you need to know the fact that she did touch, or is it sufficient that her hands got bloody? This, of course, appears to be much easier to determine, in other words, whether we should be lenient or not. Because hands do get around, so we are, in this kind of a scenario, we would be toile lekula. Okay. As far as the detail that we mentioned last time concerning undergarments. Now, if it's not possible for the dam to have fallen where it fell from the makor, unless it would have gone through the undergarment, then obviously that's something to take into consideration. So whether you find it under her chaluk or Basar, if it's not there in the undergarment, then it just could be that it came from somewhere else. We did say, however, that sometimes it's possible that during the time she puts on the beged or takes it off, that at that exact time, as she was putting it on, somehow it dripped to that spot, and that's where the ketem came from. In other words, it did in fact come from the makor, but it just happened to have been during the time she was taking it off or putting it on. So it could reasonably be that even though she wears undergarments, it just didn't get to the undergarment. So in other words, if that is a possibility, then obviously that's something to consider too. Okay, so that was just a little bit of a review from last time. Perhaps also let's just quickly go through the general description of the physical body and the garment that she may be wearing, as to when she does become tameya, depending on what part of the garment became, and whether in fact she did go through a marketplace of butchers. I would say that we can divide it into three general scenarios. There is a stain on her basar. No garment was stained, just her physical body. And with a stain on the physical body, we said that certain places become tmeya, make her tmeya, and certain places not. But even those places that usually would not render her tmeya, the Mechaber added a very important condition, that in yodat shenizdakro ve'igbiyo ragleo lemalo tmeo b'kol mokom shetimtzaen afilu lemala mechagur ben melefoneo ben meleachareo afilu ovro b'shuk shel tabochim nisasku b'ksam. In other words, if she did some somersaults, then regardless of whether she went through a butcher, regardless of where she finds it in her physical body, nizdakro, somersaults, in other words, her head was down and her feet were up. It could be that it just somehow eventually got to where it got, but it did came from the makor. It did come from the makor. So that was the only condition that would even make those places that usually would not make her tmeya, would make her tmeya nonetheless. Okay, so that was the first example of the Mechaber. Then we went on to discuss what happens if it's not only found on her basar, it's also found on chalukah. So it's found on her basar and also found on her chalukah. And she went through shuk shel tabachim on his asko b'ksam. In other words, she was busy with blood or with other things that could have made her hands dirty. In that case, since it's on her garment too, in other words, it's also on her garment and on her basar, she could be toilet. She could be told that it came, she could attribute it that it came from where she went through, from the butcher. In this case, it really does not matter whether it's above the chagura, above the belt, or beneath the belt. The fact that it came onto the garment in itself, in other words, the garment itself is stained, makes it more likely than not that it came from somewhere else. And this is especially so if it's only on the garment and not on her basar. Okay? As we will see. So right now, the scenario is that we see it both on her garment and on her basar. So if she did go through such a place, then we can attribute it to that, regardless of where on the garment it is. If it's only on the chalukah, if it's only on her garment, then we say like this: if it was found the mokam chagura or underneath the chagura, she's tmeya. Unless she went through a shuk shel tabachim, then she's tahora. So still, we're going to attribute it to that, only because it's on her garment. And if it was on chalukah above the chagura, she's tahora even if she did somersaults, even if she did not go through a shuk shel tabachim. Finding a ketem on her garment above the belt is very unlikely that it came from the makor. Okay, that was pretty much a review of the various possibilities as mentioned by the Mechaber. That was Sif Yud Aleph and Yud Beis. And then in Yud Gimel, we're going to go on to another part of her garment, and that is the sleeve. I'm going to quote from Mechaber, Nimtzo al Beis Yad Shel Chalukah, it's found on her sleeve, the sleeve of her robe. If the place where it is found on the sleeve can reach the base Taaruvot, in other words, can reach the uterus, then she's tmeya. But the Mechaber adds, Afilu eino yecholo lagia sham elam ken tishche harbe. Even if she has to make an effort, she has to bend down a lot in order for it to have reached there. In other words, usually it doesn't reach there, but if she were to really bend down, could be it got there, then she's tmeya. But if it's on the part of the sleeve where there's no way it could get there, she's tahora. So this is where we also can apply that halacha or that klal that we said before, that ein machzikin tuma mokom lemokom, to say that, well, you know, she did possibly touch there, and then she touched this spot on the chaluk, and the spot where it is right now is obviously a spot where it could not have on its own come from the makor. So we say, well, yeah, that's true, it could not have on its own, but perhaps she touched the makor with her hands, and that is how it got there. That we don't say.
Back to your comment before that, saying that portion of the sleeve.
Right.
Let's assume for the moment that she's tahor, because she knows that she didn't bend that contact.
Very good point. We will see from time to time that the question of whether a woman is believable or not comes up. And it sometimes can make a difference if she says, I know for a fact, you know, I didn't touch.
Like before with the
somersault.
You know?
With the what?
With the somersault.
Right. Exactly. That halacha would be if she doesn't remember whether she did or not. We don't have to assume she did somersaults. She could have done somersaults. See what I mean? Yeah.
So we make that assumption touched. It could have been down.
No. So here, no, we're not doing that. We're saying that if it's on the part of the sleeve where it could be possible, but she would have had to bend a lot. At that point, she could have reached over there. Then we say yes. Then it's possible that it came from there. But if it's impossible really to come from there, we're not going to make up a reason which would fall under the category of ein machzikin mokom lemokom. You know, it is possible that her hands eventually, you know, got there. That we don't do. So that's an important klal here. In Seif Yudaled, actually, before we go to all the other seifim, I think we should review another important detail that we covered last time, and that is dam that was found on her hands, because this will help us understand a little bit more in depth the various shittas over here concerning hands. Hands are askonios. In other words, they move around, they touch all kinds of places. And as you said before, you said earlier, you mentioned that finding it on the hand itself is already, indicative of most likely where it came from. The hand is one of those locations that would make her tmeya. As the Mechaber says, but in nimtza al Yore Deah, apilu al kishretz, even on the knuckles, on the joints, she's tmeya she'adayim askonios. We just need to elaborate a little bit more on that, on what the Mechaber says. If you look at the words of the Mechaber, all the Mechaber says really is, even though he's quoting here the Gemara, he says that the way he words this is like this: Yadayim askanyot, very true, we know that, and shemo nogu be'oisa mokom, and maybe they really touched that spot, the mokor. And this word shemo makes a big difference over here, because this brings out a machlokes. There's a machlokes here that, okay, if it's on their hands, it's tmeya. But what if she says, I know for sure that I didn't touch there? Okay? I know for sure. She just knows. She
says that.
Yeah.
But I've seen it mean that they didn't do something.
Yeah, but remember this, very good, good point. People forget. How could anybody be so certain? This is not a place where you usually touch. Remember, it's not the head, the arm, the foot. It's not exposed. It's not. You have a good point. How could you be certain about many things? You can't be, because if you're not paying attention, you're not expecting something, you're not aware of something. Maybe you did something inadvertently. But here, it's brought down that usually, if women do touch these places, they clean their hands. Even if they did. So that's what I want to talk about, exactly this point. So let's assume she says that she didn't touch at all. She knows for sure. So the Rashba holds like this. The Rashba says that if she knows she checked herself, and after she checked herself, she did not wash her hands, then you could say she's tmeya. Stam? No. Stam to say that a woman touched there because yadayim askanyos, and because of that, the blood that is on her hands came from there. The Rashba says no, because a woman is makbid on her cleanliness, on her hygiene, and just doesn't touch that place. So, when would she be tmeya? If she knows she checked herself there, she touched over there, and she never washed her hands after that, then you could say that. The Rambam and the Ramban say that bechol mikre, in any situation, anytime her hands are blood, in other words, there's a stain on her hands, we say she's tmeya. Why? Because it's possible that even though she may have been touching some other part of her body, some of the blood from the makor dripped on her hands. In other words, I guess they also agree that it's not something too common, and she may not do it, and she may not recall she did it, or she would have recalled, regardless. But it could have been that somehow the blood did drip on her hand. Based on this machlokes rishonim, or based on how the rishonim understand yadayim, if there's a ketem on the yad, there would be a machlokes achronim here, as to what the Mechaber holds. The Shach holds that the way he reads the Mechaber, that afilu bistam is tmeya, because he makes it somewhat clear that if dam, or if a ketem is found on her hands, yadayim askanyot, hands move around, and because of that she's tmeya. But I saw others who hold no, and that is the diuk of shema. Others write that the Mechaber is pretty much going along with the Rashba, right, in saying that shema nogu. In other words, what's the Rashba? The Rashba says it could be that she touched. That there is always the chashash. The Rashba, in explaining of what this kesem is doing in the hand, is saying basically there's a chashash, that she could have touched over there. And that's the lashon of the Rashba. And because the Mechaber adds the words shema nagu, it implies that if she knows for sure she didn't touch, then she's tahara. You see, because the Mechaber emphasizes the word Shema, then he means, well, maybe. Because that's the chashash, right? That's the chashash that we're concerned, not like the Ram the Ramban, that maybe it dripped there. No, she could have touched there. And since he adds the word Shema, in other words, he did say Yadayim Askanyoten, which is one shot. The hands move around. But since he added the word Shema, he's implying that he's going along with that this is a suffix. If she is certain that she did not touch, then she would be tahara. So this is, in some ways, this is like the Rashba. The Rashba, right? What was the Rashba saying? That if she would be tmeya only, if she actually touched there. Stam to say she's tmeya, why should we? Women are clean. If she did touch, she would have cleansed herself. So if she touched herself there and she didn't clean her hands, yes. But stam to say that she touched, and that's where it came from, we don't suspect a woman would do. They clean her hands. So here, the Mechaber, by adding the word Shema, is going along with that. Since it's a suffix, if she has no such suffix, she knows for sure she didn't touch, then she would be tahara. So that's a very important detail here. As we said before, that I think it's something that she could remember, that she could recall, if in fact she did it or not. To that, the Achronim also add the heter, the Metzaref, what the Shevet HaLevi writes, that nowadays women go with panties, so therefore you don't have to be so machmer unless she actually checked herself there. Otherwise, her hand has a kesem, and there's nothing on the undergarment. See what I mean? Now, we have that sirf as well to be makel in this case. Pischei Tshuva brings over here that even according to the machmirim that we saw before, like the Rambam, that write that when a kesem is found on Basar, you don't need a shear. If it's found on the hand, we can be makel like the person that say that you do the shear, even though it is Basara. And we said that we're more machmir on Basara. At least some are machmir, that you don't need a shear. But since this is on her hand, you could be makel, that you need a shear on the hand. And the same thing, it's brought down in the name of the Chokhmah Sodom, that in the hand, you could be makel, that you're not mitzaref the tipping. If you recall, on the Basar, even if you have tipping, tipo doesn't have a shear, but between all of the tipping, you would be mitzaref them if there was a shear. On the Basar, some say you are mitzaref. So here, if it's on the hand, there's several tipping, you could be makel as well. Okay, so I think we can go on to the next seif. In Seif Yud Gimel, which was about the sleeve, a sleeve is a part of a garment that could easily have come close to the Mokum HaTorfa, and because of that, we say that chances are it did come from there, even though it's on the garment here. You wonder why isn't it on her basar too? It doesn't have to be on her basar because it drips. So it could have gotten, as we said, also on certain locations of the garment that move around. They can also render her tmeya. Let me see, where was that? That was in Seif. Yeah, that was the Yud Beis. It was, if the kesem was found al chaluka lemata me'achagur, or b'mokum b'chagur atzmo tmeya, afilu nimtza letzat chutz. Even if it's found towards the outside, it's still possible that it came from the makor if it's underneath the chagur. Why? He says like this: Ein chiluk b'nimtza b'chaluk lefanea or me'acharea or min hatzdadim, whether it's on the side of the shab. Gadim choyzim heina v'heina. Clothes go in and out; they move around. So if it's underneath the chagur, even though but it's outside of the beged, how could it have gotten there? Still, the gadim move around, and especially at night, things tend to be moved around. So it is very possible that it still has the kesem was from the makor, which is why we're machmir. All right, so that was Sif Yud Beis, and in Yud Gimel we spoke about the sleep. Sif Yud Daled, Hoysa Poshato Umitkasev Balayla. Let's say she removed whatever she was wearing, and she covered herself with it at night. Bechol Mokom, she Motzebot Tmeya. Same thing, similar to what we said before. Since she's covering herself at night with it, any place you find it on the garment, because it goes back and forth, it moves around. There's two shittas here as to what the Gemara meant regarding a particular item she wears. So here the Mechal brings both. This halacha would be the same if it's a scarf, some sort of scarf head cover, ma'aporet shemechasar rosha, or shechokeret bo. According to the Rambam's opinion, that we're talking about some sort of belt or something that girdles herself with. So since she covers herself with it, or she ties herself with it, im kosher bo roisha heitev but if she tied it very well to her head, and when she woke up it was still tied in its place, then she doesn't have to be concerned. But otherwise, even though she's covering herself, covering the head, boy, it could have moved around at night. So something like that moves around could make her tmeya regardless of where you find the stain on it. Okay, that was Sif Yud Dalet.
That was Yud Dalet?
That was Yud Dalet. Yeah. Well, we're going to be seeing all kinds of examples here, all kinds of situations that sometimes you can be toilet and sometimes you can't be toilet. That's what all these seifim are talking about over here. The next one is interesting. It's no longer one individual. Now we're switching to two women. And then it's going to be even more interesting. We're going to see what happens. It's her and her son is next to her, or her husband. Sometimes it could be that she got dirty from someone else. Who's to say that it's hers? So here we have two women, shtei noshim, shekisu roisham becholuk echad. They covered their head with one garment. Now when we say a cholok, remember it could also be a bedspread. Okay? Bedspreads and anything that could have come in contact with the makor needs to be, looked at. Here, however, we're talking about a cholok for a good reason, because it is something that they were wearing before. Okay? And since they were both wearing it, we would think, well, aren't they both equal? Since they were both wearing, the chiddush would be here that the one that is in a worse, if I can say so, in a worse situation or in a more stricter situation, the one that we suspect the most is the one that actually covered herself. So that's what it says. Shtei nashim shekisu roisham becholuk echad. Right. So the first part of the mechaber is they both covered. Right. I'm already telling you what the chiddush here will be. So shtei nashim shekisu roisham becholuk echad. They cover their head with the same chaluk, shtei and tmeis, they're both tmeis. Achas kista, but if one covered herself, ve'acheres lo kista, the other one did not cover, af al pi sheshteim lovshu chaluk. So even though they both wore the chaluk, ve'nimtza kesem lemala me'chagu, and you found the kesem. That's the important point over here, is that the kesem is found lemala me'chagur. Also, shekista tmeya v'acheres, that the woman who covered herself with it is the one that's tmeya, not the other ones. Now, both wear it. We find a kesem. They didn't cover themselves with it. They both wear. They're both the same. One is not more than the other. When do we say one is worse off than the other? When one is having her period. Is one safer than the other when one is pregnant? So if you have those kinds of situations that you can say, you know what, more likely than not, it's her. But now we're talking about the two are the same, except maybe for a minor detail. And this minor detail makes a big difference. One covered it. Now, why would that make a difference? I mean, they both wear it? Yeah. But we're talking about specifically here that the kesem was found above. So it's not above the waistline. Otherwise, I mean, if it means the waistline, any of the two, they both wore it. So, that's why the chiddush or the emphasis here is on achas kista. In other words, one of them covered herself. So again, if both of them cover themselves, they're both the same. We have to assume that it could be either one, so they're both tmeiyas. You're not going to say, well, it's a suffix. No, I mean, both equally have the same suffix. And we have to make them, the halacha is they both come to ask a question. Well, we don't know whose baby is it. Remember the story with Shlomo? Anyway, here, we're going to be machmir for both. But if one covered herself with it, so that's the one that we're going to suspect because of the way of where it's found. It's found above the waistline. So regardless of the fact that they both wore it, but it's above. It's above the waistline. So she covered herself, so she moved around. Or it moved around by her. So therefore, she's tmeo v'acheres tehora.
It's actually.
Yeah.
What if one woman, I think you covered that too.
Yeah.
One woman is wearing a garment and she found like one woman was wearing a garment, a single woman.
Right.
Alone.
Right.
Another second woman. She was wearing a garment and she found the stain exercises that would
She's tahora, even if she did somersault. If it's only on her garment. Once it's on her garment and on her body, that's different. Right? In other words, there's on her body, on her garment, and on the body, and only on the dress, on the garment.
But so what we have here is herself.
Right.
And a woman who, worst case scenarios, find a blood spot on garment above the waistline without doing somersault.
Yeah, but it's the same. It's one garment. Yeah.
No, but that's one garment, but it's two women. It's different.
Right.
The one that did itself.
Right.
Why would we suspect it? Tell me. After all, she's no worse than without a second woman who found a stain at the top of her.
Right.
So the woman who finds a stain on the top of the garment, considered not Tom, then this here as well did not cover herself. It's a parallel to the other one. Just because there's another woman there along with her that covered herself doesn't make the didn't cover herself any worse than if there was no other woman to get. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. That's a good point what you're saying. It's an extension. It is. It's an extension of that halacha.
Covered herself.
Right. Remember, the first part of the halacha is that they're both equally the same in that case, that we're both going to be tmeya.
If they both covered themselves.
Yeah. So now the Mechaber is saying, but that's only if the two cover themselves.
Right. It's not symmetric because when in the first one you say tmeya, why would you not say they're both? I mean, a single woman who covered herself and you found the blood stain, you say the garments move around.
Right.
So in this case, why would you not say that? Because it could be just one of the two. The fact that there are two women involved here raises a doubt as to which one is it.
Right.
So this might say that they're not. The Mechaber says they're both.
Yes.
But the second case, the fact that there are two women in does not either raise a doubt or establish one to be Tame. Designates one as are distinct from another. One is the case of a garment finding the blood, and the other case is the wool and finding a blood stain on the clear. So it's not symmetrical. The first case, what might have prompted you to maybe they're both not Tame, it's the women involved, and one of them would be such blood stain.
No, I'm not really thinking about that they would not be Tmeim. I mean, I know one of them for sure is Tmeim.
Exactly, but you don't know which one.
I just don't know which one. I say they both are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And since the whole thing is Durabanan,
I may have thought that I would be Mekel. I may have thought, exactly. So the Kiddush is we're not.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And then the second case, the extension of the case, one covers it and the other doesn't.
Right.
You no longer have question about perhaps I shouldn't because there's a suffix, because now there's no more suffix.
You're saying based on the previous halacha.
Not Tame anyway.
Right.
She wore the garment and didn't cover herself.
Yeah.
And the one that covered herself, we would always say that she's Tame.
Yes.
So there's no more doubt here. There's no more.
Or is there a possibility that across the and they moved to the garments?
Yeah. We know that. We don't doubt that. We know that only one covered itself. So Ilan has a good point. I mean, here there's not so much of a suffix legabe the other, but there is still a partial suffix because they both wore the garment, and this is an important detail. It's an important detail as we will see later on, that when we're dealing with garments, it makes a difference whether the garment was checked before or not. Are you sure it was clean when you put it on or not? So
that checking was single.
Yes, that's correct. It applies to a single as well as to both.
Both of them wore it.
Yeah.
And none of them covered themselves.
Yes.
Because why would the fact that two of
Why would this be
make it
where it
worse
is?
than if
In other
one
words,
more?
the fact that it's
It
above.
introduces additional doubt, and even if we had no doubt where it came from, we
Right.
wouldn't declare it. So there we don't even need to.
Right. So anyway, the Pashup shot in the Mechaber, without looking more into it, is that by extension of the previous halacha, we know that even though they both wore it, it doesn't make it any more of a suffix for the second woman. Right? That's the Pashup shot. The way I understand it doesn't make it more of a suffix just because two wore it. And we say, well, since the two words is maybe after all, the suffix should apply to her just as much as it applies to the one who covered her. But we say no. That is the chumrah, in some ways, you can call it the chumrah, of covering herself with it. That it's the one that we say that covered her that more likely than not had the dam. Because otherwise, how did it get there? During the night, it moved around. That's the Pashup shot. If I see anything else, with Hashem, I'll let you know next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Deal.
All right. Now, in the next seif, Kazayim, which is the last seif for today, is im yesh la maka betzavara, if she has, however, a wound on her neck, v'nimtza ketem becholuk, and the kesem was found on the garment, afilu lemata me'achagur, even underneath, even below the belt, the waistline, she'i efshar ligasha mi'amaka, but it's in a place that it's not possible for the blood to have come from the makkah. Im poshato umitkasa bo tole b'makasa. If, however, she undresses and dresses with this garment, then she could still be toile b'makasa, because it could have gotten stained as a result of her getting dressed and undressed. So this is an opposite example of where we can be metaher her by attributing it to the makkah if it's in the place somewhere in her tzabara where it ordinarily could not get to. In other words, the kesem would not have gotten to where it is because of the distance, I guess. It's just not normal for it to have come from the tzavar, from her neck, all the way to where she found it beneath the waistline. Still, because it's a type of garment that she puts on or undresses, so as she's putting it on or dressing, it could possibly be that nishapech ubalasham, that it somehow got
So
there.
I misunderstood you all the time. It would normally not come from the makor.
No, here we're not talking about the makor now, right? We're talking about dam from she has a dam. No, there's always a suffix if it came from the makor, but she happens to have a petza. And remember that on the basar, a petza can make a difference.
And
Dam on the basar.
You're not saying that under the condition that you somewhere where it's usually
Not likely that it would have reached all the way from her tzavar. The
But
sleeves,
since I dress and undress,
the blouse,
it's-
I can see it coming from the tzavar. But what if it's all the way at the bottom? Yeah. But if she undresses. So on that, I saw the Badei Shulchan say like this, something similar. That regarding garments that a woman puts on and takes off through her head, as opposed to garments that she puts on or takes off through her feet, that if it's through her head, you have a situation like this. What's the kula on garments, ordinarily? On a garment, just on the garment if it's not on the basar. If it's really from the makor, then why isn't it on her basar too, right? That's the general logic behind the kula on finding a kesem on the garment. So, based on what we said like that, based on that logic, that had it been from the makor, finding it on the garment would not make sense if it's only on the garment. That's only if this is a garment, really, this is the Badei Shulchan. If it's a garment, such a garment that she puts on and takes off through her head.
I wouldn't want to just put it on.
No, well, sometimes garments are put on one way and taken off another way.
I was saying, wouldn't you take it off? Be sufficient.
Yeah, in Achinami, right, either one, right. But it's done through the head. Then that would make sense that, I can say, well, what is it doing on the garment and not on the basar? But if it's such a garment, like I guess a skirt, where she puts it on through her feet and takes it off in the same way, that's different. Why is that different? Because then it could be, as we said earlier too, that at the time she was putting it on, it got stained.
But not from the
No, not from the makor. Yeah. Unless, of course, she looked at the garment and it was always clean, right? That, which is something else, which we'll talk about another time. There is always that possibility, even with the underpants, that it could have been dripping just at that moment, as we said, onto her legs. It could be. This is a possibility. So here, the Badar Shulchan makes an interesting distinction that even with clothing, it really depends. If it's that type of clothing that one is putting through the feet, through the legs, taking it off that way, it could just be that it got to there and did not get to her basar. I mean, right? Doesn't it make sense? Yeah?
Sure.
It is. So that's an interesting diuk. And because of that, I mean, you have to evaluate the situation, that perhaps the halacha would be different in those kinds of circumstances. As opposed to ordinarily, I mean, finding something above the chagur. Obviously, what is it doing just on the garment and it's not on her basar? So being just on the chaluk alone, we're makel, because of the likelihood, or that it could have come from the outside more so than it came from the. But dressing herself from the bottom up, then there's a chance that it could have come, and that needs to be looked at a little bit more closely. All right, so Mitzvah Hashem will continue after Yom Tov.